Cool.
Okay, we're live. So thanks everyone. This is our third episode of the IEN talks, and today we have with us Bernardo Rodriguez. He's an embedded software engineer at the IOTA Foundation, and he's the one behind the HONEYCOMBOS, which is a sort of Linux distribution, an IOTA Linux distribution designed for Raspberry Pi. So, as usual, I don't know if you guys uh, participated in the past, but we will watch and listen to Bernardo, and once he finishes, we will have a little Q&A session. You guys will have to use the YouTube chat to send the questions, and I'm going to be gathering all that. So I think that's all. Thanks a lot, Bernardo, again for accepting to participate, and whatever you want, just go.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for providing us this platform. And well, like Carpincio introduced, I'm Bernardo. I've been in the IOTA community since more or less July or August last year. I have joined the IOTA Foundation in March this year, and I'm working on this project called Honeycomb OS, and this is the topic of my presentation today. So we're gonna start with some history background. So if we go back to the 1970s, AT&T Bell Labs, they created the first multitasking, multi-user operating system. It was called UNIX. This was a very important piece in the history of operating systems, especially because it became the main reference for the IEEE POSIX, the Portable Operating System Interface, and this has become sort of a standard for high-level operating systems. In the 1980s, Richard Stallman, an American computer scientist at MIT, he wanted to create, he started the free software movement that is the cornerstone of open source and free software today. And free as in freedom of speech, and not as in a free beer, for example, because this is structured in philosophies of how the source code is distributed, and how the rights for the usage of this source code is distributed. So with that, he created the GNU project. GNU is a recursive acronym that stands for GNU is not Unix, and it has this. Well, I think this is a GNU. This animal. It's kind of looks like a bull, a bison. Is the mascot. And GNU, even though it's called GNU is not Unix, it was meant to be a free Unix implementation or a free Unix clone. And he did most of the high-level parts, but he still missed the kernel. The kernel is basically the software that is responsible for making all the abstractions on top of the hardware. And that piece was missing for Richard Stallman. So he eventually came across a student from Finland called Linus Torvalds, and he was working on his own kernel, and he was willing to share it with the community. He was sharing the source code with the community, and he was asking for feedback. And now the two projects were able to work together and give birth to the GNU/Linux operating system. So we have an ecosystem around this project. And so we have many distributions. And you can think, so distro is, whenever you see distro, is just short for distribution. And you can think of a distro as a kind of a flavor of the operating system. And you're going to choose your flavor based on a few questions that you have for the kind of usage that you're going to give to this operating system. So a few of these questions that you want to answer is this going to be used for an enterprise purpose, or is this just a community project? What kind of package management do you want in this operating system? What kind of service management do you want? So in this slide, I have some examples of the most famous Linux distributions at the moment. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about hardware now. In the 70s, computers were basically mainframes that were as big as a human being. But, well, semiconductor engineering and transistors have shrinked a lot. And nowadays, we have computers that are as small as a credit card, and they're just as powerful as the computers that we had back then. And the most popular example of these little computers is the Raspberry Pi. It's a single board computer. It's been used for educational purposes, and it's really cheap. You can get one for $30, and you spend a little more on a power supply and an SD card, and you're good to go. And the operating system, the most popular operating system for the Raspberry Pi is usually GNU/Linux, some sort of distribution of this operating system. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the IOTA ecosystem. Right now, we have two node implementations that are suited for small computers. We have Hornet and Goshimer. With Hornet, you can connect to the mainnet and to the community network. And with Goshimer, you can connect to the core side AlphaNet, because that is the main purpose for Goshimer. So that's where everything comes together and where we start talking about Honeycomb OS, because Honeycomb OS is basically the IOTA operating system, which is nothing but a Linux distribution. And the special thing about Honeycomb OS is the fact that it has Hornet and Goshimer out of the box, and they're already installed for you as system services. And you can download Honeycomb OS and install it on the SD card for your Raspberry Pi, and you can start running IOTA nodes in your Raspberry Pi. And it also has a web-based graphical user interface to make the user experience a little bit easier. This web GUI, it's based on Cockpit, the Cockpit project, and it provides a system dashboard with information about CPU usage, memory, RAM, right? And network and disk I/O. And you can access the nodes, you can manage the nodes as system services, and you also have access to a terminal. So these are a few images of how this graphical user interface of Honeycomb OS looks like. This is the login page. You usually use the beekeeper user, and you need a password for this user. I'm gonna, in the end of this session, I'm gonna show the process for creating the password, because in my repository, I am sharing the default passwords, but it's highly, well, it's not even recommended. You're forced to change this password. It's just for the first time that you boot the board that you use the passwords that I'm giving to you, but then you need to change these passwords before you're able to use the Raspberry Pi for anything. So this is the dashboard, and so you can see all the information about the system here. This is an image of the service dashboard. So this is for Hornet. You can see on the right side, you have a button to start and stop the service. So basically you click here and you're gonna start or stop the IOTA node. In this case, Hornet, but Goshimer is the same. And you can see the service logs here. One important detail about this is that Hornet, the first time you start Hornet, it takes some time until it synchronizes. It's gonna download the latest snapshot and it needs to synchronize. So it can take maybe half an hour before the Hornet node is fully operational and you can access the dashboard and so on and see everything that's happening for the node. So please keep in mind that you need to be patient the first time you start Hornet. But basically, these are the logs, and you also have access to the dashboard, which is also web-based. So all this you're doing inside your browser. It's all, you need to find the IP address of the Raspberry Pi on your local network, and you type it in your browser, and basically the web GUI, the cockpit web GUI, is going to be available on port 9090, and the node dashboard, either Hornet or Goshimer, is going to be available on port 8081. And you also have access to a terminal. I'm trying to reduce as much as possible the amount of work with command line, with commands on the terminal. But there's still a few things that need to be done as commands. So there's still a little bit of a technical barrier, and you still need to understand a little bit how to use a Linux operating system and to understand the basic concepts of how to use a terminal. But overall, I'm trying to make this user experience very easy to follow. So we also have a brand. You've probably heard about B, which is the post-coordicide node that's being implemented by the IOTA Foundation. We have Hornet, which is being implemented by the community. The IOTA community is writing this node implementation. And also Goshimer. It doesn't really have a logo yet, but Shimmer is this behavior, this collective behavior of the hive, the beehive. And they are flapping their wings in a pattern to protect the hive. And it's very beautiful to see. I recommend that you just go on YouTube and type Shimmer or bee Shimmer, and you can find some videos to visualize this. It's really amazing to look at. But basically, we have everything is centered around the idea of bees and hornets. So it makes sense to have the operating system called Honeycomb, because that's where all the bees get together and where they store the honey. And maybe you can think about honey as being IOTAs. or just network activity. But that's mainly the idea behind this name, and that's why it's called Honeycomb OS. So talking a little bit about the technical impacts that I'm trying to bring with Honeycomb OS. The core of the IOTA network still needs to be powerful computers. For example, virtual private servers and cloud infrastructure to have the core of the IOTA network running and stable. But with Honeycomb OS and Raspberry Pis, I want to lower the technical barrier for entry points to the network. Not only the technical barrier, but also the financial barrier, because Raspberry Pis are so cheap. So it's important to emphasize that if the whole IOTA network is running only on Raspberry Pis, that is not an ideal scenario, because that could make the IOTA network slow. But if we have IOTA nodes that are serving as entry points to the network, this is a very cheap way to do this, and a very simple way to do this. So if you want to participate on the network, if you want to have a little gateway that you can be able to point to, this can be a solution. So yeah, use cases, like I said, the cheap entry points to the IOTA network. It's an easy way to explore what it is like to run an IOTA network and what it means to run an IOTA node. But it's important to note that this is still beta and it's not really recommended for production. So when not to use in production, if node performance and node reliability are critical for your use case, for your business scenario, for those cases, a small virtual private server with a standard distribution like Ubuntu is a much wiser choice. And finally, the social impact is the fact that we are democratizing entry points to the IOTA network with very cheap and affordable technology. So I recommend you to go to honeycombos.github.io, and there you're gonna find links to the repository where I'm making Honeycomb OS images available for Raspberry Pi 3, Raspberry Pi 4, and the Rock 64, which is kind of a Raspberry Pi clone. And right now, I want to show you a little bit of a live demo. I hope I will be lucky. I'm gonna start by scanning my IP network. I want this to be kind of a little tutorial for everybody that wants to try out. I've already flashed the SD card and I've plugged it into my Raspberry Pi, and it is connected to my router with an Ethernet cable. And now I'm scanning my local network with Angry IP Scanner, which you can find here, angryip.org. It's a very easy to use IP scanner. So I can see here that I have a Raspberry Pi 3. It's 192.168.168. So I'm gonna get Beauty, which is SSH client. SSH stands for Secure Shell, and it is the remote terminal application. So now we're gonna do the step of changing the password, the default password, because sorry, if you come to the wiki, you're gonna find that on the first time you boot, you have the beekeeper user with a pollen to honey password, and you have the root user with Tangle is awesome password. So I'm going to open PuTTY. I have here the IP address that I found when I scanned my local network. So I know that this is the IP address for the Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to click open. Okay, so it's asking me which user I'm going to use. So I type in beekeeper. So it's asking me the password. So it's pollen to honey. I'm going to type in pollen to honey. And it tells me, okay, the password has expired and you must change the password. So it asks the current password. So I type in pollen to honey again. And now it's asking me for a new password. So I type in the password that I want for beekeeper. And I have to type it again. And I did not type it the same. And that's a very bad luck for me. I'm gonna do it again. And the font is really small, but that doesn't matter. Pollen to honey. Pollen to honey. And now the new password. So it closes the SSH connection, but that is just because we changed the password. That's actually a good sign. So now you can go to the same IP address and 9090 port, and you type in beekeeper user, the new password. You check this box to make sure you still have privilege, and you're inside the graphical user interface for HoneyComboS. So there you can see the About page with information about the operating system. You have access to a terminal here. And so now let's say you want to start a Hornet node. So first thing you do is you come to the terminal and you type in sudo hornet _ dashboard, and that will enable the dashboard for Hornet because by default it comes disabled. So it's going to tell you the Hornet mainnet dashboard was enabled, and then you come to services. And it takes a little while to load. Well, basically, you scroll down and you find Hornet. And here to the right side, you have a start and stop button. And these are the logs. So you start, you hit start, and it's going to start the Hornet node. And then you type in the IP address followed by 8081. And you should be able to see the dashboard for the node. So here in the dashboard, you can look at a graphical visualization of the transactions per second. You can see confirmed milestones. You can see memory usage. You can see the neighbors that this node has. Now Hornet has auto peering, so it finds neighbors by itself. You can look at the Tangle Explorer and you can see all the transactions going on. Yeah, so basically this is the process to get started. Bear in mind that the first time you start the Hornet node, it can take a while before this dashboard is available. I had a node already running in my second Raspberry Pi, and that's why it was so fast. But this can take maybe until half an hour before this dashboard is available. But yeah, this is my live demonstration. This is what I wanted to show. And I guess we could go to questions now. If Carping
Okay.
show.
Yeah, I'm here. So let me check. Let me check again the chat. Okay, guys, if you wanna throw some extra question, this might be a good time. So let's start with what we have. The first one says, the first one says, can I run Honeycomb on a desktop computer or a VPS?
A VPS is a bit tricky. In the past, I found a project that could make that possibility feasible, but the project has died. It was called Butrino, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, but unfortunately, this project is not alive anymore. And so for a VPS, it's not available at the moment. You need to have physical access to the machine. For your desktop, the answer is yes. At the moment, if you go to the release page, you're not going to find an image for desktop there, because there's some details that I need to work to make sure that I'm not going to like break your disk. Or my main concern at the moment is to overwrite the disk. But my idea for the near future is to have a live USB. So basically, the same way that you flash a USB with an Ubuntu image and you're able to plug the USB stick into your computer, boot from that USB, and then turn it off, plug it off, and then you're back to your computer, to your normal life, to your Windows or to your other Linux. That's the main idea that I have. But for the moment, this is still not available because I still need to work some stuff and basically make sure that I'm not going to be overwriting your disk when you have Honeycomb running from the USB stick. And I also want to make sure that everything is secure and I'm not like opening any kind of security breaches to your desktop. But overall, the answer is no for VPS, but yes for desktop in the future.
Okay. So the next question is from Antonio Nardella. I'm going to display it there. Would it be a wise choice to use HoneyCombos for the upcoming Go Shimmer AlphaNet?
Well, there's been some internal conversations about the possible impact that this can have. Because if there's too many Raspberry Pis acting as nodes on the network, we still don't really know what kind of impact that is going to happen. Like, we don't know if that's going to make the network slower or if everything is going to stay the same. If we're going to have a lower throughput with lower capacity for transactions per second. But it's an interesting Honeycomb OS. I think it's an interesting possibility. It's interesting to use it as a platform to investigate all those questions and to find an answer to all those questions. So maybe there could be like some experiments of starting uh, a core decide AlphaNet only with Raspberry Pis and see what happens, or have a different balance between full servers and Raspberry Pis. And uh, I don't know, like I imagine there's some ideas of having the mainnet Goshimer AlphaNet, but also maybe some community AlphaNets running on the side. And that could be an interesting place to test all those ideas and to benchmark hardware to see what kind of impact these cheaper hardware could have in the network. And we can answer all these questions before core decide.
Okay. Okay, so the next questions, okay, let's do this one. Are there incentives for use Honeycomb OS?
Right now, not really. It's up to you. It's if you think it's interesting, if you don't want to go through all the steps of installing nodes into a Raspbian or Diet Pi or some kind of distribution. It's just I just want to make your life easier, but there's no real big incentive. I just want to make your life easier if you want to have a cheap, easy way to enter the IOTA network.
Okay. So yeah, I guess that they are asking that because of the Hornet and stuff, because you're also running a node, not only the distro. So let's go on and move to this question from Matthew. Can you see the questions on the screen, Bernardo?
Well, I'm looking at my own screen, so
If you want to close the slides, you can now. Okay.
Okay.
So
Am
I'm
I
gonna
still
read this.
sharing my screen?
No, yeah, now you're fine. I'm gonna read this one anyway. So, what's the advantage of running Honeycomb OS over a Hornet Docker container? With the container, I can deploy it in a minute on any Linux system, some single board computer, bare metal, or BPS.
Yes, that's a good question. Well, it depends on the first factor is what kind of hardware. So if you're going for a VPS, you cannot even run Honeycomb OS. So that's just crossed off. That's not a possibility. Bare metal, the same. So basically, we're restricting all the use cases to single board computers like Raspberry Pis and a desktop, like I mentioned, for the near future. And then it's a matter of balancing. It's up to you to decide. You can do it, for example, as an alternative scenario for a Hornet node on a Raspberry Pi. You could have Raspbian running there, or a Diet Pi, which are different Linux distributions for the Raspberry Pi. And then you can install Docker, and then you can get Hornet, and it's going to run the same way. Hornet, you can also point to the PPA, which is the package repository from the Hornet development team. So you can also install it natively to the Linux system, and you can also run it. Basically, you're gonna first you need to know how to use Docker, and you need to know what kind of commands, and you need to know how to deal with error messages and all that kind of stuff. And but if you're comfortable with that, and if that's your preferred way to run a node, it's totally up to you, and it's up to you to decide. I'm not here to say that HoneyCombOS is going to be the best option to run a node. There's probably many scenarios where it's not going to be the best choice. But for the average person that wants to try it out, that wants to know what it is to run a node, and wants to do it with not so much effort, then I think that's what I'm bringing to the table.
Great. So let's move on. Next question says, can a wallet be installed along with Node on a little higher megahertz MCU?
I understand the first half of the question, and I have an answer for that. But the second half of the question, I don't really understand what you mean by the higher megahertz MCU.
Joe Phil, maybe you want to clarify? No, I am asking to Joe Phil, the guy who posted the question. Maybe he wants to clarify that.
If you want to expand on the second half, that would be good. But basically, in terms of wallets, the answer is it's on my plans also to make that available. We have in the IOTA Foundation, we have an awesome developer from Taiwan. His name is Sam Chen, and he has written a project that's called the IOTA Commander. So if we... can you see my screen again?
No, I can put it. Wait. Just give me a second. Yeah. Now you have.
Yeah. So basically, we have this repository here, and this is basically a command line wallet, right? And you type in commands, and you can make transactions, you can get information about a node, and it's all command line. And it is a bit tricky because you're completely and solely responsible for the way you manage your seed. And so, yeah, Sam makes that disclaimer here. Please make sure you understand the risk, and please be very careful in the way that you manage your seed, because the seed is the most important piece of information about that helps you be the owner of your own funds. But basically, in the near future, this will be available on HoneyCombOS. So it's basically a command line wallet, and I cannot precise a date when this is going to be available, but it is on my backlog, and I do plan on doing it soon.
Okay, give me a moment so I can get back to the questions. So we have another one here that says, is there any effort to simplify the setup admin process greatly for hobbyist educational school users? I think it's pretty simple, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's the main goal. Like it's what I want to achieve. It's there's still work to be done. There's still improvements to be made, especially in the graphical user interface. There's improvements to be made there, but you're basically describing my main goal. So the answer is a big yes.
Okay. So let me check, because I think we had. So we have another one that says, what are the minimum requirements a Raspberry must have in order to run the Honeycomb OS?
Well, I'm supporting Raspberry Pi 3 and 4.
Okay.
And for Hornet nodes, like you can run with, because Raspberry Pis, they have different RAM versions, right? You can buy one with 4 gigabytes of RAM, or you can buy one with 2. think 1 also. Basically, the more the better. But Hornet allows you to run with the minimal, which is 1 gigabyte. So if you get a Raspberry Pi 3 or 4 with 1 gigabyte of RAM, you're good to go. You're gonna need a power supply. You're gonna need an SD card. I've never took the time to see like what's the minimal. I'd say a 4 gigabyte SD card should be the minimal. I don't think if you have one that's like 2 gigabytes is gonna be enough.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm gonna say 4 or more. And Ethernet cable is very important because well, the Raspberry Pi does have Wi-Fi, but I do not recommend to run a node over Wi-Fi. You're gonna be really slow, and like the air gap between the board and your router is gonna make things like not operational. And I also had one. Oh yeah, I also kind of recommend to get a USB stick, one that you're not using, and use it. I have instructions on the wiki on how to use the USB stick or an SSD or something like that, just to first preserve the life of the SD card, because if you write too much to it, you can kind of wear it out. And so that's one reason. And also because well, if you have reads and writes over USB, it's a little bit faster than SD cards, and that's basically for the database reads and writes. It's a little. The difference is not that big, but you can still save some time, some lifespan on the SD card. So that's basically the minimal requirements. And also
Okay.
power supply, right? That goes without saying.
Okay, Bernardo. So let's do one last question, and then we just finish. So this last one says, does Honeycomb OS has a graphic user interface?
Yeah. I showed it in my live demo, and I showed it on some slides too. It's web based, so it's like you shouldn't really connect an HDMI screen and a keyboard to the Raspberry Pi. You're not going to get anything out of that. It's just that's why I scanned my network for IPs. So I discovered the IP address for the Raspberry Pi, and then I used my browser in my computer to open the web-based graphical user interface. So the answer is yes, but it's web-based.
Yeah,
so you're going to access over your browser.
Yeah, it doesn't have something like KDA or GNOME. I mean, it does not have a graphic. No. Okay,
no.
Perfect. So I think that's all we have. I want to thank you again, Bernardo, for being here, for being part of this cycle, and also to all the people that participated as well. So thanks, Guy, and take care. And we will hopefully see us next week with another IEN Talks series. So
Thanks,
bye,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.